Special Agents Kyle Seraphin.
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. I'm familiar with the name. I'm familiar with the name.
Former FBI agent Kyle Seraphin, who recently received a letter from the FBI saying, be quiet about this. Kyle, welcome to the show. You're not following orders.
So, Kyle, you had some issues that brought you here as a whistleblower. Joining me now to discuss is FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin. Kyle, thanks for spending some time with us again. Joining me now is FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin. Joining me now is a frequent guest of the show, former FBI special agent whistleblower as well, Kyle Seraphin.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Right, we're lucky to have him with us today. He's Kyle Seraphin, a real whistleblower himself.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Why did you decide to become a whistleblower?
I just made a decision that this is America's information, it's not mine, and I'm not going to let the FBI steamroll me and my family.
Kyle Seraphin, he's a former FBI agent. He's the host of the Kyle Seraphin podcast, and he joins us on the phone. Hello, Kyle. Great to have you back with us, sir.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Kyle Seraphin.
Let's turn it over to two former FBI special agents turned whistleblowers who are holding the Bureau accountable, Steve Friend and Kyle Seraphin.
A brave FBI whistleblower who is a friend of our show, also Dan Bongino's, Kyle Seraphin. He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show. Follow him on Twitter. I'm Sebastian Gorka. I'll call you later. We'll talk guns. We'll talk optics.
All right. Any update on your whistleblower situation?
No, I expect to be attacked for the foreseeable future.
Okay. At least you're realistic. Thanks so much, Kyle.
All right. Kyle Seraphin, former FBI agent, also host of the Kyle Seraphin podcast. Thanks as always, Kyle. Good to talk to you today, sir.
Perfect, man. God bless you, brother. Thank you for standing up for the truth, man. Thank you for coming on.
Steve, Kyle, you guys are great Americans, and it's an honor to have you on the program. Have a great weekend.
And follow him, Kyle Seraphin, with a PH on Twitter. God bless you, Kyle. This is
Well, so Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. Great chatting with you.
Kyle Seraphin, thank you.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show for Wednesday, August 30th. And your eyes are not deceiving you. Kyle Seraphin is a man of many talents, but shape-shifting is not one of them. I am the real Steve Friend in today for our friend Kyle Seraphin, who is enjoying some much-deserved time at home with the family. Had new baby arrive a few days ago, had some recent reports and some pictures. Everything is good on the home front for Kyle, but I think he's taken some well-deserved time comforting the wife, comforting the kids. He actually told us yesterday that he took the other class of characters over to the store to go get their first experience with Trick cereal. So I think Kyle's enjoying his time home, and he will be back shortly. In the meantime, I'm here, your real Steve Friend, Friendly Friday edition, a little bit early this week. Is going to be on Wednesday, and I just want to open up with an appeal to you. I get it. I've been a consumer of the news and podcasts and news radio and television for my entire adult life. I get it. There's a relationship you develop with your host, with your show. It becomes part of your life. Kyle talks about it with me all the time. People feel like they really know him. He's talking to them. They're working out, they're making dinner, they're driving to work. They hear that voice and you feel like you really know the person. And I know it's just devastating when you don't have that voice, that familiar voice in your ear or on your camera screen when it comes time for this show that has become such a great part of your life. And I'm going to do my best today. I think I've got some good content to bring to you. And I'm not going to be alone. I'm going to be bringing on your friend, my friend, GOB Actual soon, so that he and I can have a great conversation. There he is. And Garrett, are you excited now? We can fill the chair for the time being. I like to compare myself to Mrs. Dash, which is why we've titled the show today, Mrs. Dash Hosts. Kyle is the turkey dinner that everybody comes to eat. And then every once in a while, you have a little zany zest thrown in. That's Mrs. Dash. That's me. So today we're going to see if the seasoning is enough to carry the weight for the full 1 hour stream. I will do my best. GOB Actual, can I count on you?
Don't hold your breath.
Well, better question is, can we set the bar so low that we will exceed it? Ryan is on the dials. Can you cue up video number 1 for us? Because I think it's very important to under promise and over deliver. So can we exceed this video?
Candidate. When can we take some calls, Ivan?
Whenever we want.
Do we have calls that are on there now?
No calls yet. No calls
yet. What number do people call to get on the air, Ivan? Do we have that number?
It's right there.
No, do I have the call number in front of me? Oh, I'm so sorry. That's interesting. Interesting. Do we have any calls yet there, Ivan? No calls. Let's read some more about Scientology. Is Sean Hannity a Scientologist? Alec Baldwin posing the big questions tonight here. Do we have any calls here yet, Ivan?
There you have it. That is the great Alec Baldwin pre-Rust execution. So he has been just crapping the bed, sorry for the language, for years and years on end. But I mean, in his defense, I think that he has a very high belief of his own intellect, and he thinks that this job that you and I are attempting to do right now is pretty easy, and he just rolled in unprepared and was going to toss it to the callers, and unfortunately nobody was interested.
Yeah, it's typical. It's what we talk about a lot with our former FBI colleagues, that hubris. It runs deep, and Alec Baldwin, he couldn't escape it with his faux attempt at hosting either. So let's hope we do a little better than he does.
All right, we'll give it our best shot here. We'll give it the old college try. I have queued up some information that I'd like to have a discussion with you about. It's something that's sort of been close to my heart, something that I've been working on in over the last 6-8 months with the Center for Renewing America. I think that this is the content that I've been trying to bring forward. It's content that you and I, when we went and testified, tried to flesh out, but unfortunately, there was too much childhood activity going on from the Congress people in front of us. They like to argue, and we didn't really get our chance to take our best shot. So I want to queue up the first link, Ryan, if I could. And this is a top 10 weaponization issues that are within the FBI. It's something that published last April, and it's a top 10 list, sort of keeping in the theme of the FBI top 10 most wanted. But there are issues in here that I got to a little bit more detail, a little bit more granular on than just your 3-minute hit on a cable news station. And I'd like to flesh them out with Garrett, at least a few of them, to see if he had some anecdotal experience or he wants to contribute. You always want to look outside what your own purview was. And you and I had 2 different experiences. We were actually pretty close to each other, divisions. I was in the Omaha division for the most part. I spent the latter end of my career with the FBI in Jacksonville, but the lion's share in Omaha. And Garrett, you were in Kansas City, correct?
Correct. Kansas City division. I was down in Wichita, Kansas for that entire time. Other than once I made SWAT, I traveled up to Kansas City quite a bit.
Yeah. Did you guys train in Kansas City all the time, or did you actually go out to other remote locations?
By and large, it was Kansas City. Occasionally, we'd go elsewhere. Our range was out in Leavenworth, but yeah, we, for the most part, it was in Kansas City and just the surrounding areas.
Yeah, I mean, we did our selection for new members jointly with Kansas City team a couple times, and I remember we went down and shot at the Leavenworth range one time, and you guys were intense during selection. Like your team was way more hardcore than the Omaha team was.
Yeah. I learned that after I got selected. They talked about how they had done the joint selections with Omaha for I don't know how long, but it sounded like quite a while, and then. We did a selection right before I was set to leave, and we did that one solo at that Leavenworth range that you've been to. And that Kansas City's team character certainly is a little more amped up than Omaha and probably perhaps a handful of other teams out there.
Yeah, I mean, we would come out of these evolutions, and once you're on the team, for those who don't know, you go through selection, and some teams get really hardcore. It's multiple days, and they think of it almost like a Navy SEAL buds selection process. It could be multiple days. I've heard New York is like a week long. Omaha was basically one day. I mean, it was like an 8-hour smoke session where they'd run you around. You'd be doing a lot of physical fitness, and then they throw you into a scenario when you're out of breath and your heart's racing. You'd have to make a good decision, and it was just sort of to test your judgment and what you were capable of doing. And I remember when we teamed up with Kansas City, they were way harsher on the scores than we were in Omaha, but we were always desperate for bodies. I mean, we were always right at that cut line of, do we have enough people? And then I will say this, we kind of implemented one protocol that I thought was very valuable that I would like to see implemented around. And that was every evolution of the day, one of our teammates would do it with the selectees. And the concept was, one, that you're going to demonstrate, hey, we do this too. And two, if nobody was willing to do that activity, then it probably should be scrapped from selection because you have that tendency to things, well, I'm going to make it harder next year and then harder the next year. And then eventually it does become like Navy SEAL selection. And at the end of the day, it's a 4-day-a-month training part-time SWAT team, not a tier 1 asset.
Yeah, for sure. Like our that last selection we did, it was a lot more ramped up, and it was more like 2 days. And as you know, I'm sure based on what you just said, a lot of the guys on the team, they get there and then they come up with, it's like the shiny fairy in the corner of the room. It's like, okay, what the good idea fairy, and all these guys come up with these ideas on how to smoke these dudes and whatnot. And they're like 3 guys on the team who could hang.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you're going to put these dudes through it for 2 days. That doesn't make any sense, but.
Yeah, it's a problem that exists with the FBI. Didn't make my top 10 list though. So let's get into these items. And I think you and I have hammered the first item on the list. If you scroll down, and folks, this is at americarenewing.com. This is the Center for Renewing America's website. You can learn all about this organization. They do way more than dump on the FBI, but that is my specialty. That is close to my heart. So that is something that I produce. And if you were to go to americarenewing.com and you look at the issues tab, it is under big government, where you will find this in a written format. So if you like to consume your information through reading, you can. And there's also some videos that I've discussed before on the Kyle Seraphin Show podcast. And that is every Thursday at noon, we are dropping a 2.5-minute video that is covering one of these issues. So it's a little bit more bite-sized, a little bit more consumable. So if we pull up this link here, and Ryan, could you get video number 2 ready? I want to skip over the quota system, the IPM, integrated program management. I think I've kind of beat that to death, but I would like to go to number 2. And that involves the FBI's National Security Branch, which is expanding its role into domestic criminal investigations. Go ahead and run that.
Since September 11th, the FBI's role has evolved from the law enforcement agency that we all sort of know from popular culture and through history to now it's a national security, almost intelligence-driven agency. And when the terrorist attacks of September 11th happened, and our military looked to those threats and addressed those threats, they did a fantastic job. The FBI was also tasked with a national security agenda. And after a few years, there was just not the work for them to do. But it's the federal government, it's a self-licking ice cream cone, they have to justify their existence. And as a result of that, the focus shifted to homegrown violent extremism. And those were first-generation Americans, recent immigrants who might share sympathies with outside actors like Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram. That well dried up after a few years, and now the FBI has turned its focus onto domestic violent extremism. President Biden in September of 2022 had his speech in front of Independence Hall.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
And he identified MAGA Republicans and eventually softened that to be Republicans in general as being anti-government extremism and radical ethnic extremism, parenthetically white supremacy. It's not a surprise that the FBI's two top priorities for its counterterrorism division are anti-government extremism and white supremacy as a result of that. And that is a derivative of this creeping national security state that we've had that now has all these enhancements and these tools at their disposal and at their fingertips. You look at Section 702, the FISA system, they're able to get their hands onto Americans' personal information and weaponize the levers of power against their perceived threats to the ruling elite.
All right. So I laid it out. What's your experience, GOB Actual? Have you seen this firsthand? Have you heard about it? What can you tell the audience?
Firsthand experience. So I was assigned to the JTTF out of Quantico, and it was almost immediate where I was like, there's not a whole lot going on here. Doesn't seem like. Granted, in short order, I did get a case that kept me really busy. I was thinking about it this morning when I was reading The Loop, which if you haven't subscribed, you should subscribe. But there was a story in there about 5 defendants who were convicted for violating the FACE Act. And my blood started getting to a boil. Now, I don't know all the details. They didn't have a ton of them in there. It was just more about the conviction. But shortly after I got to Wichita, I got assigned an abortion extremism case that kept me really busy for about 18 months. It ended up being kind of a nothing burger. It was at first it was a murder for hire allegation, and I think everybody probably by now knows that based on my faith and whatnot that I'm pro-life, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some pro-life people out there who may think it's okay to attempt to kill an abortion doctor or something along those lines. So those things do need to be investigated if they're legitimate. Now, other than that case and, maybe 1 or 2 others that were a little more busy on the JTTF, the vast majority of people on the squad, not a lot to do. And so, like you said in the video, it's become more of this intelligence gathering agency. And I think that was Hoover's goal, to be honest. And I think after 9/11, it really intensified. And, you mentioned Al-Shabaab and some other groups, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, whatever, that threat still exists, globally to some degree. But now all those weapons like 702, they have been turned inward. We now know that the FBI has violated their 702 use authority. So they've broken the law, by the way. I know Chris Wray likes to act like it's a policy violation and here's a new virtual academy, but that's a Fourth Amendment violation when they do that. And they have done it hundreds of thousands of times, if not more, in the past decade or so.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Ryan, could you get the second news link ready here? Because I'd like to discuss this, and I think it sort of combines the national security weaponization with the quota system. It's basically not necessarily a puzzle pieces that are fitting together, but I think of it more of like everybody's rowing their oars in the same direction here, and it's resulted in an out of control FBI. And this was a recent public release statement, Office of Public Affairs, that came, and it's entitled "Pakistani Doctor Sentenced to 18 Years in Prison for Attempting to Provide Material Support to ISIS." And this came out last Friday, and the FBI was putting it out on social media and touting itself. Let me see what your reaction is on this, Garrett. I'll read this here. It says, according to court documents, Mohammed Masood, age 31, a licensed medical doctor in Pakistan, was formerly employed as a research coordinator at a medical clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. That's the Mayo Clinic. and he arrived under a work visa between January and March of 2020, right before the COVID lockdowns. He used an encrypted messaging application to facilitate his travel overseas and join a terrorist organization. That's going to be ISIS. He made multiple statements about his desire to join ISIS, and he pledged his allegiance. Now, who did he pledge it to? I don't know. Masood also expressed his desire to conduct a lone wolf terrorist attack in the U.S. So in February, he purchased a plane ticket from Chicago to Jordan, and he was planning to travel to Syria, but because of the shutdowns, he was unable to do that. So then he agreed to fly from Minneapolis to Los Angeles to meet up with an individual who he believed would assist him with travel via cargo ship to deliver him to ISIS territory. He traveled from Rochester to LAX, and upon arrival, he was taken into custody by the FBI's JTTF in Los Angeles. Garrett, does this have all the classic hallmarks of an FBI entrapment?
You know, I wish I could say it sounded like a Jack Carr novel, but in reality, yes, this is the playbook that the FBI has been using at least since 9/11. I'm guessing, just based on what you read, that they got in touch with him with a CHS or an undercover employee, an online undercover, and they started grooming him for this attack that he otherwise wouldn't have done, which is entrapment. But then their argument there is, well, no, just because we offer up the idea to join ISIS or, whatever horrible crime, fill in the blank with it, and that doesn't mean that we're entrapping them because they agreed to do it. So that shows that they're predisposed to doing it. But as anybody who's lived, I don't know, long enough to learn to speak, human nature plays a factor here. And a lot of these people who fall for these entrapment schemes, maybe they're a little mentally unstable. Maybe they're young, maybe they're an immigrant, and they are having a hard time adjusting to society in America. All sorts of things come into play here. And so in order to make friends or, seem amenable to other people's ideas, they end up on this path to pledging allegiance to ISIS or whoever, and then getting arrested at the airport by the JTTF. And then those agents get to go back to the office and say, hey, we stopped a real terrorist, when in reality, just like the TSA, they haven't stopped a real terrorist in recent memory.
Yeah, I think we're speculating a little bit. I mean, look, like it could be a righteous case, but it just has all those features that you and I have become more and more familiar with as we look at it with a more skeptical eye. A couple of things here that just screamed out to me about a problem. He came on a worker's visa. So in theory, he was vetted to come into the United States. So there was a failure there. I want to know if there's any accountability held up there. But it also made me think, did they let him in knowing that he would do this so that they could have this ISIS case? And I think what bolsters that argument is the fact that they brought this charge on him in 2020. It was just sentenced last week in August of 2023, which means fiscal year 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. That is 4 fiscal years. The Minneapolis division has an open ISIS investigation where they actually don't have to do any work. They're just waiting on the prosecution to flesh out the charges on it. And I don't know why it would take that long. I didn't work in the national security sphere for that long. It seems to be pretty extensive, but I guess it's not unusual, as we've seen with the January 6ers. They just kind of sit idly for years upon end without having their day in court. And I think that ties to the IPM, the Integrated Program Management Quota System, because you're able to check that box. You're able to get that ISIS case, and you might have entrapped somebody who was not predisposed to actually carrying out an attack or joining ISIS, or maybe you intentionally let him in the borders of our country so that you could check the box on having that case.
Right, which, we've talked about that a fair amount too over these last few months about IPM and stat padding and how this all tends to work when you have a look behind the curtain. And think of that. And again, like you said, a lot of it is speculative, but if they let this person in just so they could have that ISIS case open, I mean, to me, that either shows, one, how foolish and incompetent you are to allow someone like that into the country, or two, it shows that you knew that they were not an actual threat, but you could pump up your numbers and get that ISIS case open and then leave it open in perpetuity for 4 years at least until sentencing happens, and then, close it down with your final, big stat claim of sentencing and whatever other stats you can throw in right at the end.
Yeah, I guess they're not going to get the disruption because he's a lone wolf, but they still have the ISIS case, which is pretty sexy. They love to have that ISIS case. I had that pressure from my executive management when I was in Jacksonville Division. I want to move on to the next item on the list, but before I do, you mentioned Catholic Vote, so let's pay some bills here real quick, folks. Catholic Vote being one of the sponsors of the program, the Kyle Seraphin Show. It is a fantastic resource. You don't have to be Catholic to enjoy it. You don't have to be Christian to enjoy it. Sign up for the Loop from Catholic Vote. And I will say, and I've had this discussion with Kyle and with Garrett, it is one of the most, one of the best aggregators of news sources that I have. And I'm on the news and I'm in the fight every single day. And I have my regular websites I like to visit. The Loop has certainly expanded my horizons. I've gotten access to news that is relevant to my life and to what's going on in the world and in our country. And it's things that are not covered by some of the more traditional news aggregator websites. I certainly have found tremendous value to that. And they are a very devoted sponsor to the program. So I would encourage everybody to sign up for the Loop at Catholic Vote. And secondly, Ryan, could you cue up the Patriot Cooler ad? And we can pull up the visual on that. And this is the OG sponsor of the Kyle Seraphin Show, Patriot Coolers. We have a running joke whenever somebody who criticizes Kyle or any one of the members of the Suspendables, they always like to say, "I've supported you since the beginning." So it's become sort of a laugh line to us whenever we see that. But as the case with Patriot Cooler, they have supported Kyle since the beginning, the first sponsor that he ever had. And they make a fantastic product. It kept Ryan nice and cool in his visit to the border. Why don't you go ahead and run that, pull that up there, Ryan.
Here in Lagula, Texas, out here tracking illegal aliens that are crossing the border. Behind us is the Rio Grande over there. It's 105 degrees out, sweating my ass off. Couldn't be hotter, honestly. Backpack gear, you name it. The only way I'm staying hydrated is thanks to Kyle Seraphin and Patriot Coolers. These 32-ounce American Pride Patriot tumbler has kept my drinks ice cold this entire trip. You won't find a better guy or a better company that supports American Patriot, that supports our values, that's willing to go above and beyond to make sure that the brave men and women, the whistleblowers that are coming forward, have a source of income. They donate to veterans, they do it all. They sponsor the Kyle Seraphin podcast. And that's a company that I want to be around. That's a company I want to support. Visit patriotcoolers.com/KylesFan and get 10% off the latest Patriot coolers, tumblers, coolers. Probably got some sweet merch, coffee mugs, coffee cups, you name it. Grab yourself some, grab your friends and family some, support the show. Again, my name's Ryan Mehta. Catch you guys in the next one.
Well done, Ryan. We were talking before the show about, is that heat a dry heat? And he said, it's a hot heat. And the Patriot Cooler got him through that. So let's move on though on this list from this list of weaponization, this top 10 list, again available at AmericaRenewing.com under the issues tab, Big Government. You can watch videos for it or actually read it. And if you queue up video number 3, Ryan, this is going to involve the FBI is weaponizing process crimes and reinterpreting laws to initiate pretextual prosecutions in order to persecute political enemies. Go ahead and roll it.
In federal law enforcement, you have process crimes that are normally derivative of a legitimate investigation. So let's say that there's a bank robbery, the FBI is investigating it, they have their suspect. While they're interviewing him, he lies to them. Well, that brings in an entirely new felony charge where you're lacking candor with the federal agent. You don't launch an investigation on the premise of he may have lied to a federal agent. There's normally an underlying righteous investigation going on. Well, the FBI is now contriving reasons to contact their perceived enemies politically. And as a result of that, has spun up investigations against them. And you look to no greater example than General Mike Flynn. Now, Director James Comey has publicly stated that in the early days of the Trump administration, he sent 2 agents to speak to Mike Flynn. The premise of it was the Russia collusion case, which has been sort of exposed as a hoax. Even high-ranking administrators within the FBI mentioned that what is the point of our conversation with Mike Flynn, and in written format said, is it to get him to lie so we can charge him with a crime or get him fired? That is a perfect example of the FBI weaponizing a process crime to go after somebody who they perceive to be problematic. Reinterpreting laws is a problem that has been beefed up recently. And you see the most recent obstruction or impeding a official proceeding that we see with so many of these January 6 subjects. That is a law that was drafted in the aftermath of the Enron scandal. It was part of the Sarbanes-Oxley Acts, and it was drafted with the intention of stopping accountants from shredding documents that were going to be used to prosecute the Enron executives. It was essentially an evidence tampering law that was put in place. Well, that law is now being reinterpreted and applied to hundreds of people who walked to the Capitol, did not commit any acts of violence or vandalism, but it's a way to charge them with a felony as opposed to a misdemeanor. And interestingly enough, that same law has been reinterpreted yet again to charge Donald Trump for his involvement with having classified material at Mar-a-Lago.
All right. Immediate reactions to that, Garrett.
There's so much there. And as an agent, I used the threat of 18 U.S.C. 1001 numerous times because it's a good way to try and ensure that the person you're speaking to is going to be honest with you. I never have charged it, never one time. Even when there were times where it's like, okay, I already told this guy he's going to be obstructing us if he lies, and then he says something that you know is a lie because you did a thorough investigation, and then you hit him with that and you say, well, I know you're lying and here's the proof. And one case I'm thinking of, I was showing him still shots of security camera footage, and then it was all right, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And it's like, okay, you still don't charge it, and then you use the example of Michael Flynn. It's probably one of the quintessential examples out there, because I think it was a napkin that the FBI agent used, and I forget who it was, but they wrote, are we trying to actually do a righteous investigation here, or are we just trying to get him, essentially? And thankfully, some of Michael Flynn's attorneys, the Banal Law Group, are some of my attorneys, so I'm quite familiar with that. I think back in March they filed suit against the DOJ, suing civilly on behalf of General Flynn. And for those of you out there who like to sleuth the internet, if you can find, it's easy to find, but their complaint, it's a fantastic primer on what was happening during those years, because sometimes we forget the details. But then furthermore, I am now also on the receiving end of being accused of process crimes like that, as you know, Steve, as you've talked about before. Our friend, Representative New York D, Dan Goldman, and he knows better, or should, because he was an AUSA prior to buying his seat.
10 years, man. 10 years in the Southern District of New York.
Yeah, so you would think he would know better when he says that me mistaking my attorney fees being paid for by a foundation with them actually being pro bono. He knows that that's not actually obstruction. Yeah,
and your mistake was in not labeling it as being as generous as it actually was.
Right. It's like, okay, I mean, I guess if you're going to charge me and arrest me for that, I mean, go ahead, I suppose. But
yeah, I mean, well, I've pushed back and I said the Republicans owe you a perjury or some sort of 1001, which is, again, lying, lacking candor with the federal agent, some sort of lying to the federal authority referral to the DOJ, which, it's in the hands of a Democratic apparatchik, being in Merrick Garland, the general, or Lisa Monaco, who's more likely just pulling all the strings. So nothing's going to go there. But they owe you that referral for somebody like Christopher Wray, who's now been provably lied to Congress on multiple occasions, or an Elvis Chan, who's lied about the FBI messing around with Twitter. I think the examples are rampant here. Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever considered walking into a AUSA's office and saying, hey, I think I got 1001 charge. Can we run with that?
Never. I mean, nobody. in their right mind would do that. But like you said in that video, it's become weaponized, and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I think the crimes are, and from both aspects of it. So the 1001 charge is if everything falls through and the drugs got flushed down the toilet, and then the witnesses are in the wind and we can't find them, at the very last we have to put this guy in jail for everything that he's done. It's what they did to the mafia guy. It's the tax evasion. It's the fall safe that we are going to charge him with lying. So this is the way that we're going to, and it's a low grade felony, so you can get people to plead guilty to a misdemeanor if necessary, but it's a fallback. And then you combine that with the other side of it being the obstruction of an official proceeding that we've seen with all these hundreds of people on January 6th. Again, it's a felony, and people are getting charged with misdemeanor trespass or parading, whatever the federal statutes were, and they were tacking this obstruction of an official proceeding on top of that because that was enticing them to plead guilty to the misdemeanors. Otherwise they would face the felony, and that would be guaranteeing time behind bars.
Right. Some troll on Twitter yesterday asked Kyle and you, I might have even been included in there too, but I think he was more directing at Kyle. It was like, simple question, simple answer. What do you think about January 6th? And it wasn't even what do you think? It was, what are your feelings? And it's like, this has nothing to do with feelings. But let's think about January 6th for a minute. Anyone who's worked in law enforcement should know that there were people, based on just public information, not let alone the video and whatnot that we got to see as agents when we were, covering these leads. Anyone with a rational brain can look at that and say, there are people here who should be charged with felonies. They're battering police officers, they're breaking windows to enter, etc. There was enough of that going on that would keep agents across the country somewhat busy in going after true perpetrators that ought to be charged. And then there are countless people who are standing behind the velvet rope because they showed up 2 hours later and there was no fracas going on. And now they're like, oh, people are going in, and I guess I'll go in too. Are we really going to devote and dedicate the full-fledged power of the FBI, the world's most powerful law enforcement agency, to that? The answer should be no, but we know the answer has been yes, which just goes to show even more how politicized it is. And I know people will say, well, you're just a mega Trump hack, Kash Patel, J6 supporter. And it's like, none of that could be further from the truth. But if you just think about it from a rational, reasonable law enforcement perspective, both things were happening. Yet we're throwing the book at every single person who was involved and trying to weed them out as much as we can. When in your case, you could have been going after child porn possessors and people who were doing horrific crimes like that. But no, we're going to go after the grandma standing behind the velvet rope. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I think the entire incident, Kyle's compared to the Great Rorschach test. And unfortunately, too many people have to pick a side. It's, either it was all good or it was all evil. And I think we have to be, certainly as investigators, you have to have the ability to hold more than one thought in your mind at the same time. And you can say that somebody committed a crime and they can still be entitled to their due process rights and their civil rights. And then that doesn't change that fact in this country, which was one of my concerns. I mean, look, we had a guy who was accused of a felony, probably was a righteous investigation. But when he says to you, I will cooperate, and then you don't talk to him for a year and a half and instead elect 18 months later to send SWAT to his house, that sounds a lot like Waco and Ruby Ridge to me, where you're setting yourself up to have a fall, where you're going to have a risk to that person's safety, the personnel safety. It's easily foreseeable. You're not taking a big leap intellectually on that. And I think that's been too often the case with so many of these January 6 cases. And I think that also it's not perfect. It's a very messy situation. Anytime you were dealing with actually millions of people all engaging in independent actions at one location, there's nothing that's, again, back to the puzzle. It doesn't all fit perfectly. There's not Dr. Evil behind the scenes, with the cat who's trying to set up all these Trump voters to go to prison. And I don't think that the Proud Boys were going to overthrow the government. I tried to itemize some of my broad strokes of it, and let's see if you agree or if you have some additions to throw in there. I think that there were people that engaged in violence. I think that there were professional provocateurs that were there who were dressed in the MAGA gear, but they were in fact trying to make them look bad and undercut what their efforts were. I think that there were informants that had infiltrated organizations, and as we've discussed, and then we can discuss later on this list if we have time to get to it, the informant protocols are broken, and they will push groups of individuals to do things that are not predisposed to do. I think that the groups like the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers or these other organizations that have been painted as these domestic terror groups that were trying to overthrow America and seize our democracy, hat tip to Special Agent in Charge Sherry Onks of the Jacksonville Field Office. I think they went there after being frustrated for about a year in 2020 of sitting and watching Antifa and BLM tear up our cities and seeing these avocado toast kids. And we'll see later on in this program a video of. And they said, I'm going to go there and give them the butt whipping that their daddy never gave them, which is why they had the body armor and the helmets and no weapons, but they just were prepared to get into a fist fight, which, you shouldn't intend to ever get into a fist fight. But I think you can wrap your head around that as a testosterone driven male. And then lastly, and this is, I think, the largest component that nobody's talked about. When was the last time that you saw a miracle on 34th Street?
Probably last Christmas.
Oh man. Oh, you got little girls. Okay. The scene in the courtroom when they walk through with all the letters from Santa Claus. Kids, make sure you write Santa Claus this year, by the way, to prove that Santa Claus is real. I think that there was an element of that amongst large groups of the crowd, that they're going to walk through the people's house, which is supposed to be the people's house. We're going to redress our grievances and express ourselves to these Congress people, because President Trump brought a lot of people to the political fold who were very novice at it and very naive, I think, not really come to the conclusion that you and I have in so much of like, it's just this game, nobody's really going to do anything. But they thought walking through the Capitol will demonstrate to these people the magnitude of the support behind Donald Trump and the questions behind the outcome of the 2020 election, and the Congress people will be floored like the judge in that case of Miracle on 34th Street was, and will be then driven to actually do an audit of the election.
Yeah, hat tip to you for another fantastic analogy. I love those. I don't know how you come up with them, but you're
Metaphorically speaking by Steve Friend. That'll be my next big hit.
But yeah, I think that's a good point, because who hasn't done something out of anger that they regret? Who hasn't said something out of malice or spite that they regret? Most of the time we do it to a loved one, which is an interesting rabbit hole to jump into. But in this case, yeah, you had all these people who thought, I'm going to show them. I'm going to show whoever they are, Congress, the left, the swamp, whoever they are, we're gonna show them that we mean business. Okay, that was dumb, but they did it. It happened, and I think you're right. They thought, okay, we're going to be taken seriously, but what they've failed to realize, and it's something I have probably realized a lot more in the last year, especially with testifying and all of that. Nobody cares. They're not going to take you seriously. It's a game. Like you said, it's a game. It's a game to the political class, those in Congress, and it's all about to them moving the pieces around the checkerboard. And us, lay people and us peasants, we think that it all matters a lot more than it does. And honestly, it should matter a lot more than it does to most people. But we have, for decades now, I think we have fallen away from what this nation was founded on and how it is supposed to be by and for the people. And it truly is by and for the elites now. And I just don't think a lot of people on January 6th or a lot of people today have come to that realization. And it's a sad one to come to, but for me, at least, that's the truthful position to land on.
It is. I think we both landed there, and unfortunately or fortunately, we found each other, and we've been able to commiserate together and talk about these issues and try to push them out into the public as much as we can on this fledgling podcast. Whenever Kyle lets us come on as guests, and then today, getting the reins, getting to sit in Captain Kirk's seat. So let's move on to the item number 4. Again, this is AmericaRenewing.com. This is a list of weaponization items that are within the FBI. If you go to the website, it's under the Issues tab, Big Government. You can watch the videos attached to it and also read and share it around as much as you can. This is going to be issue 4, Ryan. This is video 4, and it involves the FBI's intelligence analysis capability increasingly dictating its operations, and it's turning the FBI into an intelligence agency with a law enforcement capability. Go ahead and run it.
We recently saw an intelligence analyst out of the Richmond field office draft this report pertaining to radical traditional Catholics. Now, if you read that report, it's a grievance list against individuals who prefer the Latin Mass, hold a view that is pro-life, pro-traditional marriage, pro-border sovereignty. And if you pull back from that, it was not only sourced improperly, where they only used left-leaning sources such as the Southern Poverty Law Center, The Atlantic, Salon.com, but it targeted those individuals for infiltration, to recruit sources. And they wanted to recruit people to inform on their fellow parishioners for holding views that are shared by a large swath of the American population. And the overriding theory behind that report was these people could become radicalized against the government.
So that's the thermal exhaust port that Kyle was able to bring out a few months back with the Radical Traditional Catholic memo from the Richmond field office. It is the memo, the intelligence report that Christopher Wray lied about when he said it was completely isolated and within the Richmond division, has now been exposed that elements and personnel from Los Angeles and Portland were involved in that as well. So again, where's that perjury referral? Judiciary Committee. I think we need to have that brought up. But I think it's a larger issue. And I've kind of come on this idea from that report, and I've read through it, and I know you have as well. The word in there, and in the full disclaimer, the entire report needs to be tossed into the dustbin of history. It's abhorrent and disgusting. The word that disturbs me most is opportunity. Mm-hmm. And they said that the Catholic parishes are an opportunity. Well, an opportunity for what? Well, in that case, it's an opportunity to recruit parishioners to inform on their fellow parishioners and give us information about them becoming radicalized anti-government extremists. So the FBI is always looking for opportunities. That's not in keeping with traditional law enforcement. Law enforcement's goal is to keep crime down, but because of the integrated program management quota system, where it turns that on its head, you're incentivized to hit the stats, drive the stats up. So you're always looking for opportunities. In this case, it was an opportunity for a confidential human source. With the Pakistani doctor from the Mayo Clinic, that was an opportunity for a domestic terrorist case, especially an ISIS case, which is very valuable and very hard to get now. And there's always looking for an opportunity. Look at the military, the Michigan case in Gresham Whitmer, the Wolverine Watchman. That was an opportunity for a domestic violent extremist case. The FBI is always looking for opportunities. Your thoughts?
Always looking for opportunities. I agree. Another case that many probably don't know about that is another great example of this. It was decided by the Supreme Court in 2020. It's called Tanzin versus Tanbir. I know of this case because my very first SSA is named in the case. When she was an agent in New York, she was working on the JTTF. I don't remember exactly what aspect of JTTF, if it was CI or IT or whatever it was. But her and her squad mates started approaching members of the greater Islamic community and trying to turn them into CHSs. And they threatened them with all sorts of things they cannot threaten people with, like, we're going to put you on a watch list. We're not going to let you leave the country, or we're not going to let you back into the country, and all sorts of stuff like that. But it gets worse because these people said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to work against my community. I don't want to work against people who believe the same way I believe. I just want you to leave me alone. Well, her and her squad mates, they didn't leave them alone. They did put them on terrorist watch lists, and they did harass them to the point of, some of them losing jobs and all sorts of stuff. Like, if you dive into this case, it's heart-wrenching. And we're seeing that again now with this Catholic document. It's all about that opportunity, and different sects of religions. The government in this country has forgotten that we have a First Amendment, that we can worship whoever we want or no one if we want. I mean, you all should turn your life to Jesus Christ and recognize that he's your Lord and Savior. But in this country, you're free to talk like I just talked about whatever God or fake God or no God that you want. But the FBI has said, no, we're going to use it as an opportunity to drum up terrorism, domestic terrorism, you name it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the FBI itself sort of views itself as almost a religious entity, where you have the cult of the director. He's the leader of this organization, and you have to express fealty to it. I mean, that's why I had these moments where I had meetings with my executive management where they were like just floored that I could possibly think that I had an oath of office, not above my duty to the FBI. And it's very disturbing when you're in that room. I almost had that sense of I cannot remember for the life of me that movie where they start chanting "one of us, one of us, one of us," and it was almost, just they had that sensation of they just wanted me to, they really thought I was gonna be like, you know what, you're right, I'm one of you, and I will go back to work right now. But the toothpaste was not out of the tube with somebody like me at that point. How old do you think the intelligence branch is in the FBI?
Man, as an actual branch?
Yeah, as an official branch.
I'm going to take a stab at it and say that was spawned out of 9/11, but it could
That's
go
a
back
good
further.
guess. It's a good guess. It's actually younger than that. 2014, brainchild of James Comey.
Wow.
So for any argument for continuing to fund this FBI as it currently stands, which I think any reasonable objective analysis of the American people are not getting $11 billion worth of value for the expenditure that it's giving to the FBI. But we can't possibly operate as a country without the FBI as it's presently constituted with this intelligence branch. It's less than 10 years old. And I think that it's also worth noting that it creates dozens of these senior executive service positions, and they should be eliminated because they're often populated by people who have checked the box enough to promote, but that just are not good at or even proficient enough at the promotion process to get the sexier jobs. So they kind of like put them into the land of misfit toys and intelligence, like our friend Jennifer Moore, who came back from the land of misfit toys to ascend to executive assistant director of human resources.
Yeah, and then she signed the security clearance death warrant for all of us. And miraculously, I don't know if we've told the audience this before, but she was deposed on June 2nd, and then she retired on June 3rd. Is that suspicious to anybody? Seems suspicious to me.
Yeah, and found a nice landing spot for herself over at General Electric. I'm sure she's making some BOCO pay right now, more than her salary and her bonus structure was within the FBI. So, definitely well done, good and faithful servant of the regime. And speaking of that, and we can pivot away here in the final minutes off of this list. I think anybody who wants to go and we can talk about in the future some more parts of it. I think they're worth going into. I'd like to get Garrett's perspective on it. But just talking about Jennifer Moore, I'd like to do 2 palate cleanses to send everybody off on their hump day. One is going to be just a question from me, and the other is going to be a final video. So first question, are you familiar with the game Kiss, Kill, or Marry?
Yeah, I am.
All right. Well, so just to prevent any sort of censorship or accusations of violence, Security Division, I know you are watching the Kyle Seraphin Show. We're going to slightly change this game to Kiss, Jail, or Marry. Okay? And for those of you who don't know, I'm going to name 3 names, and Garrett will be responsible for what he would do to each one of them. He would either give them a kiss, put them in jail, or marry them. So prepare yourself, GOB Actual, for this list. Christopher Wray, Jennifer Moore, Nicole Parker.
Oh man. Let's see here.
I've thought this through. You want to give? I can give you my analysis.
No. I'm gonna go into it cold. Oh man. Okay. I'm gonna kiss Chris. I'm gonna jail Jen, and I'm gonna marry Nicole Parker.
Okay. Reasons? Anyone you want to go into, or is it just?
Jen Moore has a special place in my heart for what she's done to all of us, and so she can go to jail for that. And then Chris Ray, you know what? I can give him a kiss. I can look past his misdeeds and incompetence and give him some love and whisper in his ear that I think he needs to turn his life to Christ on my way out. And then Nicole Parker to marry, because I'm thinking longevity, long term. I think I could get past some of the how would I phrase this? Some of her grasps at the spotlight, and I think we could make it work long term.
Okay, I like it. I respect it. I have put way more thought into this than any human should, and let me give you what my rationale is for what I've done this. And Ryan, let me get your thoughts too. Should I get approval or not? This is metaphorically speaking, of course, security division. You cannot marry Jennifer Moore because you either wind up dead or in jail for child porn, as both of her prior husbands are. So that's off the board, right? So I'm going to marry Christopher Wray. And the reason that I'm going to marry Christopher Wray is he is a government bachelor who lives apart from you in Washington, D.C. You can live in a sweet Atlanta mansion, live the life of a guy who earned $9 million and just be like a stay-at-home husband and not have to fulfill your husbandly responsibilities with any sort of regularity. So I think that that's the way you got to go on that one, right?
I like it.
All right. So and you gotta jail Jennifer Moore. I mean, obviously she's ruined countless lives and has landed in this spot of luxury for herself and demonstrate herself to just be a flat out evil person. And I guess you leaves you with kissing Nikki Parker, who's been affectionately referred to as FBI Barbie. And I don't do that with any sense of satisfaction or pleasure. It's just to mess up her $200 makeup that she got for her photo op in front of the cameras at the arrest operation that she had no involvement with.
I like it. I mean, we landed relatively similar.
I mean, I'm kind of disappointed. I devoted hours of my life of analysis. I mean, it's been well documented that Steve Friend is a long distance runner. So like 2 hours a day. I mean, there were runs that was just devoted to this question.
I mean, that'll get you through those long runs as you play out every single scenario. I have a question now, though, for the security division who's watching. Are they still going to try and claim that you're homophobic or that this show is homophobic? Because, I mean, you admitted you would marry Christopher Wray.
Not that there's a problem with that, to quote the great Seinfeld. Correct. That is an excellent point. So I guess you could be a homosexual who incites violence unless you're in Covenant Christian School in Tennessee. But you certainly are not homophobic. So excellent point, GOB actual. And we want to pivot to our last video here. This is, again, close to my heart. It's going to be close to Garrett's heart. We actually did the real law enforcement. This is a video from the protest in Nevada that was preventing traffic from reaching I think was it the Burning Man ceremony? Ryan, can you cue up video number 5? This is what real police work looks like, unlike the FBI, which is law enforcement cosplay. Let's go ahead and run it.
Did anyone get that? Yeah. Daryl! You better move. You're gonna go next. They've changed! We're environmental protesters! Stop resisting! Stop resisting! standing here? What the He's hurting me!
There you have it. Father of 4 small children. I assume that you were accustomed to the child that just plants himself on the floor of the supermarket and starts screaming and crying like an out of control toddler. Unfortunately, these people are old enough to drive. Now, I would like to contrast this with what we talked about with the arrests that went on with the street side preachers like in Wisconsin. And I think that it's worth noting because, like, it's funny that guy rolls out. I had to find a different video, the one that's unedited and has no bleeps in it. I want to keep it family friendly, but he comes out with his shorts on and his tactical boots because it's Nevada and burning hot. But it's like such a dad move, and he's screaming like, "Get on the ground!" And I'm like, that's my Huckleberry right there. But it's important to note that, look, if the street preacher had been obstructing traffic, I would expect no different treatment. It's not anything ideological. It's the way the actual behavior of the people there, where they're putting their beliefs in front of people. And if you want to do that, it's civil disobedience. There are consequences for that, and there's the piper needs to be paid.
Right.
And this guy was not afraid to be accused of being overly aggressive, and he was very professional with them and was arresting them, and they could scream how they were being hurt, but it was pretty clear to me, at least just watching the arrest, the handcuffing techniques were pretty standard.
Yeah, I agree. You watch that. I love how one of those protesters said, "Did anybody get that?" Yeah, you're recording yourself breaking the law. You cannot block a road in any part of the United States that I'm aware of. So those officers acted how they ought to have acted because you were breaking the law. Now, if you were standing on the side of the road, off on the shoulder with your signs and protesting, or on a street corner somewhere, or even if you went and got a permit to do it in front of City Hall, go ahead. Go and do that all you want, but you cannot block a road. And we saw that in 2020 as well with Antifa and BLM as well, and usually nothing was done about it. So in this case, it's good to see that he went through and said, "No, this is done. This is over." That's what law enforcement is supposed to do when people are violating the law. And then when the one is screaming, "He's hurting me, he's hurting me." Yeah, standard handcuffing techniques is what it looked like. And then on top of it, when you are passively resisting, so like the child screaming in the middle of the supermarket, you lift that child up and you stick them in the cart, or you carry them out of the store or whatever. Same as in this case, when you're just sitting there like, "I'm not moving, I'm protesting," well, then I am authorized to use a little bit of force to take you into custody. And then when you start with resistive tension and pulling away, now you are resisting. And so now I'm justified and authorized to use even more force. Where in this case, they didn't even use that much force. They put her face down on the ground and took her into custody. I mean, that's standard stuff.
Standard stuff. And that's when you get to drop the line of, "These handcuffs are new, they'll loosen up, don't worry." All right. So there you have it, folks. I appreciate everybody's time and attention today. Again, I get it. You're used to hearing Kyle's voice. He will be returning very shortly. And I hope that we provided some insight and some laughter here. Before we leave, Garrett, why don't you put out your socials so people know where to follow you?
Yeah, GOB Actual pretty much anywhere. Truth, Twitter, and Instagram. And then my Substack, lastline.substack.com. And then if you're interested in merch, which I'm working on, we've had a handful of orders come in. It's the-suspendables.com. And just a heads up for Labor Day weekend, starting Friday, I implemented a little crash sale. So 10% off if you use the code LABOR, all capitals LABOR, at checkout. So the-suspendables.com if you're interested in that.
Great job, Garrett. That's how you celebrate a communist holiday like Labor Day. Excellent. Folks, you can follow Ryan. Ryan, why don't you throw out your information? I'm not familiar enough as Kyle is.
You can follow me on Ryan Matta Media. And don't forget to give a big shout out to everybody who has went out of their way to leave us a 5-star review. I wasn't sure if you're going to get to this, Steve. If you were, you want to give them a shout out?
Yeah, absolutely. Good catch by you. So 5-star review, folks, make sure you like the smash button. Give 5-star reviews. It helps the show. It helps it get to more ears. I think that the content we're presenting is unique. It gives an insider account of a lot of this. And Kyle he operates at a whole nother level. And if you were following along, you are operating a whole nother level, and we appreciate you. We love the relationship that we have with you. So here is one from last week. It's interviews you won't hear anywhere else. Kyle's long-form interviews are top-notch. He's willing to interview people mainstream media won't touch. He asks insightful questions and provides a platform for people to tell their story as it is without any spin or agenda. And that's from Brian 102 or Britain 102. Thank you very much for leaving that review. I like to count myself as somebody that the mainstream media won't touch. And from our Friendly Fridays, you can follow me, everybody, at Real Steve Friend on Twitter, at Real_Steve Friend on Truth Social. Again, the book is still out there. True Blue, My Journey from Beat Cop to Suspended FBI Whistleblower. And I encourage everybody, the information we talked about today is at the Center for Renewing America's website, americarenewing.com. You can learn about everything that is going on there. Have a fantastic day. God bless you all, and thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at